Over the years, our kids have had a lot of illnesses. 6 kids means a lot of childhood sniffles and coughs. And when our kids weren't feeling well, it affected our entire home. Luckily, some clever guys in Brisbane have come up with the perfect solution: Rehydrate.
Rehydrate are delicious drinks that rehydrate up to 3 times faster than water alone, packed with essential electrolytes. Rehydrate is one of the few rehydration products that is safe for all ages. Stock up at Coles and be prepared whenever illness strikes.
Hello and welcome. This is episode 11 of the Happy Families podcast. My name is Dr. Justin Coulson, and this is the podcast dedicated to making your family happier. I've taken a few months, in fact, I've taken the best part of a year away from the podcast, but it is back, and assuming everything goes well, you should now be hearing from me every fortnight as we play around with ideas for making your family happier. In this week's podcast, do you know someone who's always right? They can't be convinced otherwise, even when they're absolutely wrong. Well, to start off this podcast, we're going to get a little bit deep, and we're going to investigate how we do this as parents and what it does to our children. I hope that you're open to exploring a little bit inside yourself today and considering how you see the world, because this one will be a little bit of a challenge to look inside and have that level of self-awareness, some tough stuff to consider. And do you ever find yourself telling porky pies, little lies to your children? Well, one mum has told her daughter a big one, and she's asked me for some advice in Dr. Justin's 3-minute therapy. I'm going to talk about why we should never lie to our children shortly. Plus, since this podcast is all about making your family happier, I'm going to share some ideas about how to have more fun with the kids. Simple things that you can do to have more fun that take minimal energy but provide, hopefully, maximum joy. That's to wrap things up a little later in the podcast. But next, let's take a look at how open we are to the possibility that we might be wrong as parents.
Are you endlessly nagging, shouting, pleading, threatening and demanding that your children behave? Do you live in a dictatorship where the kids are in charge? Time Out is Not Your Only Option is an ebook with discipline strategies and ideas that work. And they work without you carrying a load of parental guilt around all day. No more yelling, threatening, bribing or timeouts. From day one, you'll notice the difference in your children and they'll notice the difference in you. Time Out is Not Your Only Option by Dr. Justin Coulson. Available as an ebook and an audiobook at happyfamilies.com.au.
Some time ago, I coached a family that were really struggling in their relationships. The two parents were at each other constantly. The wife saw her husband as selfish and aggressive and narcissistic. And look, the guy wasn't perfect. He potentially was all of those 3 things. Interestingly, however, she was not willing to see whether he might be something else. So for a few weeks I watched as he did absolutely everything that he could to be unselfish and patient and focused on hearing his wife and responding to her needs. And he failed several times, there's no doubt. But from what I saw, there was genuine, marked improvement. But his wife refused to see it, because to do so would have meant that she would no longer be justified in her anger towards him. If he was changing, if he was becoming better, then that meant that she had to be in the wrong because she was still mad at him. And there's something compelling about being angry, isn't there? If he was changing or improving, it meant that she couldn't hold herself up as the pinnacle of righteousness and goodness and relational rightness. It meant that she would have to reevaluate their relationship and the way that they interacted, but she was getting so much mileage out of being right and him being wrong. So our sessions together were full of finger pointing. I'm right, he's wrong. There was no acknowledgement of any of his efforts. There was no acknowledgement of any of his improvements, because that would have meant to her that she was giving up ground. So instead she'd say, well, that's fine, but what about when you did this? And what about when you did that? And she just couldn't get past it. She was not able to prevent the mistakes that were derailing the relationship because she was so attached to being right, to being justified in her own behavior, and I guess also to being mad. And I've seen this happen with parents as well. Parents of toddlers, parents of kids, parents of teenagers. It's particularly true of parents of teenagers. We get annoyed at our teen for something. We label them a nuisance. Our favourite fun word in our family is, you little punk, stop being a little punk. But we label them a little punk or something far worse than that. And once we've labelled them and we've gotten involved in that process, what happens then is that we insist on being right about everything. And the teen gets something wrong in our eyes and we come down hard and fast because they're such rotten, punky nuisances. I love this quote. It says, "Why we should all admit and embrace being wrong. Attachment to our own rightness keeps us from preventing mistakes when we absolutely need to, and it causes us to treat each other terribly." It's by Catherine Schultz in something called On Being Wrong. Let me read it again because it needs a little bit of thought. Why we should all admit and embrace being wrong? Because attachment to our own rightness keeps us from preventing mistakes when we absolutely need to, and causes us to treat each other terribly. See, we become so attached to being right that we fail to see the possibility that we could be wrong. And that's devastating to family life. The husband who insists that the dishes have to be cleaned a certain way, or the mother who gets her children in trouble for doing something but won't hear their side of the story. Maybe you've been there. You start your pre-prepared speech about how you children never listen. I told you to do this and I told you to do that and you haven't done any of it. And then, your eldest explains that they stopped to help someone, or offers a beautiful explanation for why your demands weren't carried out. When we can't admit that we're wrong, we continue to make mistakes. We continue to get caught up in defending our pride, and ultimately, we cause harm to the people that we're supposed to love the most. So an insistence on being right leads to us treating other people really, really badly. What can we do instead? Well, I recommend a couple of things. First of all, we can ask ourselves, could I be wrong? That one question changes everything. Second, let me recommend perspective taking. When someone does something that we don't like, we could pause and consider why they did it. What do they believe? What's going on in their mind? A parent of a toddler told me that a little girl kept on getting out of bed to talk to her, but she wouldn't listen. She kept saying, just go to bed. This toddler was supposed to be in bed and asleep. And the little girl just sobbed and sobbed. But Mum, in her mind, I'm right. It's her bedtime. It's late. And so she used her power and her authority to force her to bed. And a short while later, this poor little toddler was sick all over the pillow and the mattress and the doona and the floor. But she was so scared of leaving her room again that she stayed in the vomit all night. And it wasn't until the next morning that this mother walked into the room and saw what had happened. And she felt terrible because suddenly she realized that she had been wrong the night before. There was a father of a teenager. He had a fight with his daughter and they screamed names at each other and slammed doors and stomped feet. And the father actually got quite physical with his daughter. He hit her. He pushed her against a wall. And as we counseled together, I recommended that he do whatever it takes to restore the relationship, and he refused. He said, she started it with her attitude. She's the one that needs to apologize to me. I'm right. She's wrong. He needed her to refuse to apologize so that he could continue to be angry and justify that anger. He needed to wait for her to apologize or to refuse to apologize because that was why he was allowed to be mad. While ever she was doing the wrong thing, he could feel good about himself because he was the victim here. Hey, I'm not responsible. She is. She's the one that started it. And of course, as the victim, he justifies himself in calling her names, being prideful and giving her the silent treatment because it's not his fault. She started it. And what does that do to her? Well, she feels victimized. He's my dad. Sure, I did the wrong thing, but you would too if he was always treating you like that. And the cycle continues because she feels like that she behaves badly. Because she's behaving badly, he feels like that he behaves badly to her. She feels horrible, so she behaves badly. And it goes on and on and on. So let go of the attachment to being right. Instead, be curious, be caring, and be compassionate. After all, what matters most? Being right or having a relationship with someone you love? I teach my kids that there's 4 steps to every apology, and we should all memorize them. First, say sorry. Second, explain why you're sorry. Third, describe how your action affected someone. Fourth, ask forgiveness. It might go like this: I'm sorry. I got pig-headed and I refused to listen, and it made you feel like your feelings and your perspective didn't matter. Will you forgive me? Now, apologizing isn't always about being right or being wrong either, by the way. Sometimes it's about saying, I value this relationship more than I value my ego, and I'm willing to do what it takes to make this relationship right. It's amazing what statements like that can do to make your family happier. And remember, be open to the possibility, like I said, that you might be wrong, because if you're like me, it happens more than you might like to admit. Now, based on what we've just shared, let me ask you a question. Does this inspire you, this idea, or does this idea frighten you? Have you ever thought about how your need to be justified means that you can't be wrong? It has to be the other person. I know it's a kind of a heavy topic, but I'd like to know what you think. Leave your answer at justincoulson.com/podcast/11, as in the number 11. I'm really interested to hear your thoughts. Up next, 3-minute therapy with a mum who has told a big lie to her daughter.
Parenting is the most important thing we will ever do, so it's important that we get it right. But with so much pressure, demands and advice, it's hard to know what our children really need. Using the very best scientific research and then turning it into an easy-to-read book and CD, What Your Child Needs From You helps you connect with, understand and teach your children in meaningful ways. What Your Child Needs From You by Dr. Justin Coulson is the parenting book that offers the solutions to make you a better parent and help your family to be happier. Available in paperback or CD at happyfamilies.com.au.
So in today's 3-minute therapy, I've got an email that, well, it's a big challenge. A mum writes, Hi, Dr. Justin, I'm divorced and my 6-year-old lives with her dad. He recently got married, but my daughter does not know about our divorce. We live in different cities, so we told her that we have jobs in different cities, and that's why we live separately. How can I tell her about her second parent? She's so confused. What should I explain to her? I'm so confused and upset about how I can make her understand the whole situation. My ex doesn't understand how to explain this to our child. Please help. This is my response. It's a bit of a tough one. First thing I thought as I read this request was the famous couplet from Marmion. You may be familiar with it. Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. It seems that we live in a world where people are, well, I think Dr. House said it best. You remember the House TV show, Everybody Lies? We live in a world where everybody's lying. There's regular deception everywhere we turn. And the reasons are many and varied, but it seems to me that parents in particular lie to their kids a fair bit. The reasons that I see parents lying to their kids usually fall into a handful of pretty obvious categories. We're trying to protect our children from info that might hurt them, or we're trying to manipulate their behavior. You know, if you don't be a good boy, Santa won't come, that sort of thing. Or we're hiding things from them, like when they ask, what are you eating? And we quickly swallow the chocolate that we were sneaking and we say, nothing, I'm not eating anything at all. So these responses, often, not always, but often they're well-meaning, but they're not what our children need to hear from us as their parents. So my suggestion is pretty simple. Tell her the truth. And here's 5 reasons that honesty counts. Number 1, children whose parents lie to them are shown in research to be significantly more likely to lie. We set the example, monkey see, monkey do. Second, telling lies deprives children of the opportunity to grow and develop through the adversity that we're protecting them from by lying. Now, we don't need to do a whole data dump and tell them the whole truth about everything in one massive load. They need us to deliver the truth in age-appropriate ways. But they need us to tell them the truth, and lying is only going to offer short-term relief. Third, lies can actually create worse anxiety and pain for the child than being told the truth. Let me put you in your child's shoes for a moment. Motivation for this mum has naturally been to protect her daughter, but how confusing has this situation become? And when she does see one of her parents being what she deems as unfaithful to the other parent by spending time with the new spouse, what's she going to be thinking? So, while there might be some sort of short-term protection from dishonesty, ultimately, truth demands her dues. The anxiety and the confusion that come from dishonesty bring a burden that I think is much heavier than the short-term alleviation of pain might justify. Okay, here's a fourth reason that honesty counts. If your child lied to you, then you would probably punish your child for that dishonesty. So aside from the fact that research shows that punishing children doesn't work, especially when we punish them for lying, we expect our kids to tell the truth. We need to do the same thing. We wouldn't accept dishonesty from them. We should have the same standard applied to ourselves. And finally, a fifth, and I think perhaps the most poignant of all, when we lie to our children, we're actually lying to ourselves. We might say, I'm lying to protect my child, but the truth is we're lying to protect ourselves. We don't want to see the look of pain in our child's eyes. We don't want to see that look of betrayal as we tell them something that we know is going to hurt them. So we're acknowledging in the very essence of our lie that we don't want to deal with the distress or the anger or the confusion that they're going to feel if we're honest with them. So our lies are actually betraying our personal pride. They teach our children that it's not okay to be vulnerable. They teach our children that they can't grow, and they harm our children. So what do we do about all of this? Well, our children don't need to hear the full truth in all its uncensored glory for every question that they have. They need us to be truthful, but they need us to respond in an age-appropriate way. So let's say a couple is separating. Parents should be truthful about this with their children, but the degree of disclosure regarding the separation depends on how old the child is. You probably don't want to discuss issues that might injure a child's relationship with one parent or the other. If infidelity or pornography or gambling or drugs are the cause of the split, then the parents might divulge that they're separating because they didn't treat each other well and leave it at that. The extent to which additional information is shared might change as the child gets older. We don't have to share everything with our kids. We just need to tell them the truth in age-appropriate ways. So I'd like to hear from you. Go to justincoulson.com/podcast/11, like the number 11, and tell me, do you agree with me? Should we always be honest with our children in age-appropriate ways? Or do you think that it is okay to tell a few white lies here and there, or even a couple of big porky pies to protect them? Leave your answer at happyfamilies.com.au/podcast/11. That's happyfamilies.com.au/podcast/11. And I'll be back in a second with a parenting idea for making your family happier and a couple of really exciting announcements.
Dr. Justin Coulson is one of Australia's most respected parenting voices. His seminars have equipped and empowered thousands of parents to make their families happier. But sometimes getting to a parenting seminar can be tough. There's work and other commitments. Then there's the issue of the children and babysitters. Now you can watch one of Dr. Justin's seminars from the comfort of your own home and at a time that works for you. Sit in on one of Dr. Justin's parenting seminars as he takes you from confusion to clarity. You'll learn how to build a strong connection with your children, how to really understand them, and how to get discipline right. What your child needs from you. A seminar from Dr. Justin Coulson. Download this 90-minute seminar now or purchase the DVD at happyfamilies.com.au.
Okay, that's pretty much all there is for the podcast today, but I do want to make mention of a couple of quick announcements. First off, if you go to happyfamilies.com.au, you'll be able to check out my brand new program and book, 21 Days to a Happier Family. You can download the book and the program and get started right away on making your family happier in 21 days. If you just want to get the book, it's available online, or you can go into pretty much anywhere that sells books and get a copy. It's published by HarperCollins and it is everywhere. Exciting news as well is that it's being released in the US and the UK later this year. So even overseas people will be able to get hold of it. 21 Days to a Happier Family. It's my brand new book and I'm thrilled to be able to tell you about it, plus the program, all online at happyfamilies.com.au. Second announcement, throughout the next couple of months, I'm going to be traveling and speaking all over the place. I'm off to New Zealand, I'm in Melbourne, I'll be in Adelaide, Sydney, Brisbane, and a handful of other places around Australia. Lots of my seminars will be open to the public, so check out my Facebook page for updates if you'd like to see me live and work out how to make your family happier. And I'd love to come to your place as well. I speak in schools and at functions all over the country, so if you'd like me in your community, chat with the decision makers, send me an email, info@justincoulson.com. I'd love to come and make an impact speaking about parenting and well-being for staff, students and families. Okay, let's wrap this up. I've got a fun and simple idea for you to get more out of family time. One of the things that my kids love to do is go cardboard box sliding. It's really simple. We grab a big cardboard box, we sit on it at the top of a really big steep hill, and we slide down the hill. Hill has got to be steep. If it's not steep enough, then you'll pretty much just stay still, or you can put strips of cardboard on the grass and slide your piece of cardboard over the top of all of those pieces of cardboard. But a good steep hill is best. You won't believe how much fun the kids will have, and you'll have fun as well. It might be something that you can try this weekend. Well, that's pretty much all we've got time for this week. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions that you'd like answered, go to happyfamilies.com.au/questions, and I'll do my best to answer you in an upcoming podcast. You can leave an email there for me. And if you've enjoyed this episode, you can find the outline and the resource links in the show notes at happyfamilies.com.au/podcast/11, as in the number 11. And if you think that the podcast has made your family happier, or if you think it could make other people's family happier, I'd be stoked if you'd visit happyfamilies.com.au/podcast/11. You'll find a pre-populated Twitter or Facebook post that you can share with your friends and your followers, and you can get the word out about the podcast, or you can rate it on iTunes. It's your ratings that determine how likely it is that people will discover the podcast. The ratings are what increase the visibility of the podcast and help other people to find out how I can help them to make their families happier. And quite frankly, I want to make this the best parenting podcast in the world. I need your ratings on iTunes to be able to do that. Please do that, and subscribe on iTunes as well. Well, that's it for this week. I'll have another podcast ready to go for you in a fortnight. We'll be talking about 5 ways to know if your relationship with your children or anyone in the family is in trouble. Until then, remember, you don't have to be the best parent in the world. You just have to be the best parent in your children's world.